Right, so you've learned a little bit more about the Victorian society and their attitudes towards crime and punishment. What we need to look at is how that was reflected in Conan Doyle's stories and his writing. So we know that Arthur Conan Doyle was making a social commentary. He was exploring social prejudice and ideas. And so we need to look at what were the ideas and how did Conan Doyle respond to them. Obviously in the video it was mentioned there that the Industrial Revolution, which was a huge turning point in the Victorian period, a time where industry shifted society massively, it created opportunity, it created jobs, it created a huge new workforce, but it also widened the class divide. It created this huge new working class who, though they now had these new jobs, had a space in society which was almost dangerous and certainly threatened. They were given a broad generalisation by the middle and upper classes as a kind of animalistic group. They were considered to be the criminal class, and there was the association: if you were poor, if you were of the working class, you were also criminal. You were in some way barbaric. You were not able to control your behaviour in the same way, and there was often again the assumption that things like substance abuse, alcoholism, drug use would have been really rife in the working class. Now, all of these prejudices still exist today. There are still many societies, including sadly our own, where these class prejudices are a big part of our social economic ideas, and it is troubling. It is something that writers today are still concerned with. Now, what Conan Doyle does, arguably, is mock these ideas. He mocks the prejudiced generalisations that are made about class and the nature of criminality. We're going to explore how he does that in a moment. We understand, looking back at the Victorian period with a more critical eye, that many crimes that took place, this is a huge period of criminal activity, especially in cities like London, but so many of the thefts of the the attacks or whatever those crimes might have been, were a case of survival. So if it was the case that more working class individuals were committing crimes or certainly getting caught, it was often because of desperation, because of reduced circumstances. And actually, when we look back at how those people were tried and how they were punished, it's incredibly unfair and it appears incredibly cruel, because whether someone was trying to survive or not, that didn't matter to the criminal justice system or to the popular prejudices. So someone would have been blamed and chastised even if they were stealing an apple to feed their family, etc. Now, those ideas and aspects of the criminal, barbaric, animalistic working class were perpetuated by many stories of the times, and many writers, particularly in the Penny Dreadful stories, emphasised and exaggerated the nature of the working class as criminal. However, my interpretation is that Arthur Conan Doyle arguably does the opposite. Although he does in some of his stories, and if you read more of his stories you will see this, he does fall into cliches and caricatures of certain types of people. That's definitely something that he is guilty of. He also does a lot, and I think especially in this story, to expose the hypocrisy of class judgments and prejudice. For instance, he exposes the hypocrisy in the upper class gentleman, and spotlights the fact that actually those at the top end of the class system were behaving in a similarly criminal way. They just weren't being caught or they weren't being judged. He spotlights the reality, I think, of Victorian criminality a lot better and a lot more honestly, perhaps, than some of the other stories at the time. And he does intend, I believe, to highlight the inconsistencies in the Victorian paradox and the contradictory nature of the Victorian period.